Good afternoon, everyone. Chef Carla, Chef Rich, and I welcome you to week 5 in CU 122. Very impressive week 4. I think we saw a lot of great assignments, which we really appreciate. And I just listening to the conversation right now, I love the enthusiasm that we hear. That's absolutely fantastic. I did hear a little bit of talk about networking. Take all the opportunities you can to network with each other in this industry because it's going to carry you places. Chef Carla and Chef Rich could probably agree with me, but I run into people that I worked with in the early 1990s, and I just got a Facebook message from somebody from 1989 that I worked with. So these people, these relationships that you develop now here in culinary school will last you for the remainder of your career. So and you never know what door is going to open as a result of it as well. So, Chef Carla, how'd you like week 4?
It was good. I know there were some challenges with the hollandaise, but we kind of anticipated that because it's not an easy technique. It's going back to the same. I think it's a little more challenging than the mayonnaise because you're dealing with the temperature. But in general, I saw some really good. The egg technique looks pretty good. And so it's just a matter of keep practicing your hollandaise. It's not one of those things that you're going to do once and be very good at it. You got to do it over and over and over. That's it.
Absolutely. And for those of you that had challenges with your hollandaise, it's very, very normal. You're in culinary school and you're learning a technique. We don't consider it a fail. We consider it a first attempt in learning, which is an acronym for FAIL, F-A-I-L. So definitely be patient with yourself, keep trying, and definitely follow the instructions for the technique, and you will get it. It can happen. So hang in there, everybody. You guys are doing a great job, and so far we've been very impressed. Chef Rich, how did you like week 4?
I thought it was pretty good. I did notice it was pretty challenging with the hollandaise and stuff, and I just had a lot of that feedback too. Don't get discouraged. Egg cookery is a whole different kind of beast in itself. It takes so much finesse, low heat cooking. It's all about that technique. So, and really you get that all in practice. So I can't tell you how many egg yolks I've broken to try and get consistently able to flip eggs and not break them. So it's not like something that comes, overnight or with one try. And, also with that hollandaise, like I was saying, also a lot of that feedback, it's really important to get those production photos so I can see it kind of through all the steps of the way to get there, because it's like when you're making your mayonnaise, but now you have probably double the amounts of opportunities to break that sauce based on, cooking those yolks, overcooking the yolks, to getting the butter in there, to keeping that, at the right pace. And then even it's a temperature thing back there. So if I can get all those production photos and see it kind of through those steps, I can try to see where you went wrong and help you through that, because it is pretty tricky. So I was just kind of right there with you guys. So a lot of feedbacks, just don't get discouraged. Egg cookery it's a tricky thing. And it like I said, it's just, it always to me was a whole different kind of beast with just, it really is down to that finesse and that technique. And that just comes with practice. So, it is what it is. So just don't give up. And then, hollandaise is a mother sauce. So it really is important to get that down and learn it, because you're going to use that so much, so many variations, that technique. So you really don't want to sell yourself short and make sure you nail it. So just, like I said, keep trying until you get it. So.
Absolutely. Great words of advice, Chef Rich. Everybody definitely hang in there. Breakfast cookery. I've always thought about breakfast cooks as a ballet dancer driving a race car while fighting Mike Tyson. It is a skill and an art form at the same time. You are cooking low and slow at a very high pace. And so it's something that's, we're not born with this skill. It's something that we learn. And while you're learning, do not become discouraged just because the egg yolk broke or the hollandaise didn't emulsify. That cholesterol and that lecithin trying to bond with the fat from the butter, it takes a little bit of time to master that technique. So be patient with yourself. It's our recommendation. I know Chef Carla is going to say the same thing, but get out there and try it again. Just do it over and follow the instructions. Go back, reread the material and watch it. It's a valuable skill once you're in the industry. Chef Rich mentioned the fact that it's a mother sauce. Hollandaise breaks down into multitudes of different sauces, from Chiron to Maltese to Bernaise and many, many others. So it's something you can carry forth with you. But great job, everybody, overall on week 4. Chef Carla, Chef Rich, and I really appreciate all the hard work. And it is evident in a lot of your assignments. So thank you very much for doing that. Ladies and gents, let's take a look at week 5 here real quick. A couple of notes. Awesome job in week 4. And then quick side note, we'd like to see everybody begin your assignments a little bit earlier. We're noticing quite a bit of procrastination still. And there is a certain sense of urgency that is required to succeed in this industry. There's an old saying that we have in the kitchens, us old dogs. We say if it can be done today, it should have been done yesterday. And it's not that we're trying to push you guys harder and faster. We're trying to get you guys to learn how it is in industry. Chef Carla, you have any words of advice on that?
Yeah, again, I think we've talked about this before. It's just a matter of like being able to organize your time. You really got to sit down, especially if you guys are submitting late, which is on today, Wednesday, and Thursday. You really got to sit down and make a list of the things that you have to do. I mean, I know we understand you guys have priorities in your lives that you got to get to, and I know school, it's in between. I understand that, but you got to sit down and make a list. Where are you going to squeeze school at? There's got to be time. I'll be honest, you guys, I ended up doing my master's degree. I had so many things going on in my life during that time, but I said, forget the socializing, forget everything. I had to put that aside while I was going. I knew it was going to be a short period of my life that I was going to focus to do this, and I did it. I had to put everything aside, but it was a sacrifice that I needed to do, and it felt so good when I was done. So I know you guys can do it. Find a little time during your time off, and start putting your work together. That way you can start submitting on time. That means by Tuesday. If we can ask you guys to try to do that. Thanks.
Excellent words of advice. And I think sacrifice is kind of the word. I remember when I went to culinary school, and I'm finishing one of my degrees right now as well. And I have to make a lot of sacrifices. There's some parties or some social events that I would love to attend, but unfortunately my priority is getting my education and getting that finished. And so I do make that sacrifice on a regular basis. So, I heard Sarah mentioning before class started that, oh, I'm getting orders, and how excited she was. But can you imagine waiting till the people showed up to start the order? No, it doesn't work that way. In the restaurant industry, as a culinarian, we work in advance. So everybody start getting in that habit. I highly recommend, and I know Chef Carla feels the same way, but when you take a look at your weekly assignments with everything going on in your life, consider breaking your assignments down into smaller portions. Take a look. Sit down today and take a look what's due on Tuesday, and maybe make yourself a little prep list. Say, hey, I can do this on tonight. I can take care of this tomorrow. Maybe you could measure out your dry ingredients on Thursday, and then you could make your pancake batter on Friday and cook off your pancakes. Boom, you're done. Go to the store, buy your mise en place on Friday. And then on Saturday morning, crack your eggs. Sunday morning, make your omelet, and you're done. It's just a couple of minutes each day instead of trying to eat the whole elephant all at once. It's words of advice that will carry you far within industry. Ladies and gents, also remember there is a time change coming up this Sunday, November the 3rd. I think it's the old saying is fall forward, spring back. Or how does that go? Chef Rich, do you know? Is it
spring forward, fall behind?
Spring forward, okay.
Fall back, spring forward, yeah.
So yeah, fall, okay. I always get a little bit mixed up in that thing because we don't change time here in Arizona. So it's the rest of the country that does. So don't forget that.
We're gaining an hour then for the majority of us, right? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I'd hate to misquote this because I've done that before and then people don't show up. Yeah. And ladies and gents, a word of advice, and I'm sure Chef Carla, Chef Rich will jump in on this one as well. Expose yourself to as many different foods as possible. Every now and then in this class, we hear people say, well, I don't care for peppers or I don't care for X, Y, and Z. The more you expose yourself to food, the more well-rounded your palate is going to be and the better you're going to be able to create and develop foods as you become a chef and as you climb the ladder. You know, Travis was talking about the Saltimbocca at the beginning of class. I thought that was wonderful because you're exposing yourself to that. You know, he had chicken in his, and then there's prosciutto. Traditionally, it has sage and these other things. The more flavors you expose yourself to, the more different things you try. You may not like it, and that's okay. But certainly expose yourself to as much as possible. And then, ladies and gents, I just wanted to share with you real quick. One of our heroes in this industry is Paul Bocuse. Paul Bocuse recently passed away at the beginning of the year. He was 91, 92 years old. He started the world's foremost culinary competition, which is the Bocuse d'Or. It took the United States 25 years of competing to finally win a silver medal, thanks to their coach, Thomas Keller. But one of his biggest sayings is that when an architect makes a building, it is considered a disaster. When a doctor removes the wrong foot, it's considered a mistake. However, when a chef cooks a bad dish, we can just sauce it up and call it a new dish. So that is one of his biggest sayings. He was quite the talented. If you ever get a chance to look him up, I highly recommend it. Taking a look at week 5, ladies and gents. Right? On our class page, we have 2 knowledge checks. I noticed a couple of people in my class that missed taking both knowledge checks. So remember to take both of them. Chef Carla, did you have a couple people that missed both of them, or one or the other?
Yeah, I do, and it's a shame, you know, because I just want them to like get those points. I know it's not a lot of points, you guys, but eventually all those points will add up. You know, we need all those points now. We got to get them. You never know when you're going to have an emergency, right? And those little extra points here and there will add up eventually. Yeah.
Absolutely. So ladies and gents, make sure you take both knowledge checks, and don't forget that you can take those as many times as you like, and only that highest score is going to stick. And then this week in the kitchen, we're working on pancakes and omelets. We're starting to go into the world of flour and into the world of baking, and we're going to talk about that here in a few moments. Here's a prep list for everybody. In the world of culinary arts, we always make ourselves prep list. And I'm sure Chef Carla, Chef Rich probably do that on a daily basis now. And I know I certainly do. So get yourself in the habit now. Thanks for being here for the live session today. And then read research materials, complete both knowledge checks, sit down, take a few minutes, do that tomorrow, and you're all set. And then read and understand the assignment. Make sure you take a look at the rubric. Make sure you take a look at what's required as far as photos. Sit down and do that on Friday and get your mise en place. Prepare your assignment, check against rubric, and submit it on Saturday and Sunday. And then Monday and Tuesday, just sit back and wait for your feedback from Chef Rich and resubmit as needed, and you're looking good, right? And that's what it's all about. Chef Carla, Chef Rich, and I are here to help you guys succeed. We're trying to show you how we do it in industry. And once you become a chef and you're out there, these are the expectations. So now is the time to form that habit. So does anybody have any questions about our week 5? Nobody? Ladies and gents, in your weekly presentation as well, there is a conversions knowledge, some conversions in there that are commonly used in the kitchen that will help you with your conversions knowledge check as well. So heading into week 5, we are taking a look at the bake shop, and we're kind of putting our first foot in. And I know that there is some certain paranoia. Some people get a little bit nervous. I think we're going to be addressing that here in just a few moments. But one of the first and foremost things that we want to talk about tonight is gluten. And there seems to be a lot of mystery out there about gluten. What is gluten intolerance? What is celiac disease? People with celiac disease are not able to digest the protein gluten. And gluten is found in wheat, rye, spelt, and barley. Gluten comes from the formation of 2 different proteins that are found in those items. One is glutenin and the other one is gliadinin. And when you mix those 2 proteins with the addition of moisture and you begin to knead it, you develop strands of protein that we refer to as gluten. Now, we see a lot of gluten-free foods on the menus these days. I think the actual percentage of people that are actually gluten intolerant or have celiac disease is about 3% of all the people that are out there saying they don't eat gluten. So you can do whatever you want to with that information. But it has something that is kind of a culinary trend that's kind of risen, and we're starting to see the backside of it now. The bottom line to gluten: the more you mix your dough, the tougher your product becomes. It's that simple, right? The higher the protein content, which we will discuss in just a moment, the higher the gluten content in the final product. I refer to gluten as being the walls in the structure. Whenever you cut into a piece of bread, you'll notice that there's bubbles in there from the gases that were given off from the leavening agent. Those bubbles, or the ability for the bread to rise and hold its shape, is created by the strands of gluten. And that is what gluten's job is. So does anybody have any questions about gluten? No? When you sit down, if anybody wants to try this at home, you can take about a cup of flour, mix it with about a cup of water, and just knead it for a little while. And as you pull it, you will notice strands begin to develop. As you pull that strand, those are links of protein called gluten that are creating those strands. You can also take that ball after you've worked it for a few minutes and it becomes kind of tough. You can actually wash it under water, and what you'll be left with are strands that look like rubber bands. Have you done this before, Chef Carla? And it's yeah, and it's almost like a ball of rubber bands, isn't it? Kind of neat.
Yeah, it is. And that's what gives you the structure, gives you, like you were saying, the walls to hold everything in place. I don't know if anybody has had the opportunity to bake anything with gluten-free. I know I've tried, breads and tried muffins once, and as soon as they come out of the oven, they collapse because there's gluten holding anything together,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really, really important to remember and also be very conscientious of this as well. When you are in industry and you have a customer that comes in and they have celiac disease, please take extreme caution to care for the product. Gluten actually ends up in everything. You need to be very careful if you're using any type of boxed goods. Make sure you read the ingredients, because a lot of times the flour manufacturers will pull the gluten out of the flour, the two different proteins, during the manufacturing process, and they sell it and they put it into different products. So sometimes it's in products we're not aware of. So we want to make sure we take good care of those people. It's a situation of respect. Now, gluten. I mentioned a moment ago, gluten is developed by mixing the two different proteins found in flour, okay, the glutenin and the gliadin. The amount of protein in a flour is determined by the type, right? We've all gone to the store a couple times. We've seen cake flour, pastry flour, bread flour. The primary differences between those flours is the level of protein. I think this week's recipe calls for cake or pastry flour, and I hope with what we're sharing you now will help you guide you through that process if you have to make a substitution. Taking a look at the different levels of flour, cake and pastry flour, right? We've all had cakes or pies before, and they're very gentle. They kind of crumble, they kind of fall apart when you eat them. The reason is cake and pastry flour has a fairly low level of protein. Cake flour comes in about 9%, whereas pastry flour comes in about 8%. So when you're developing the dough, you don't develop a lot of glutens and the product does not become tough. So you have to remember, cake and pastry flour, very low levels of gluten. All-purpose flour is what we see most common in the kitchen. It's exactly what its name says. It's all-purpose. And the protein level in that flour ranges anywhere between 9 and 11%, right? We like to say it's about 10% of 10% protein, right? So that tells me that for this week's assignment, if I'm unable to find cake or pastry flour, I could substitute all-purpose flour, but I would have to be extremely careful and cautious when mixing, not to overmix and overdevelop those glutens. Otherwise, my pancakes will come out very, very tough. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes.
Chef, really quickly, the recipe calls for all-purpose for the pancakes.
Oh, okay. Did they change it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Thank you. So and then once again, that would work in reverse as well. But if you had to use cake flour for the pancake batter, you would have to mix it a little bit extra to develop a little bit of extra protein. And then bread flour, that we use for baguettes, ciabatta, and all these other types of breads are going to be higher in protein, anywhere between 11 and 13%. And the reason that it has a higher level of protein, because you want that chewiness, you want that bread to be able to hold together, so when you slice it, it stays together, and all of that good stuff. Does anybody have any questions about flour? Anybody?
I generally use the 00 flour.
Correct.
Because after life in Italy, that's kind of life-changing for me, so I love the 00 flour. I'm not exactly certain on what the protein content is on that. I think it's around 7%. Is that accurate?
It's actually a little bit higher than that. 00 flour comes in right around 9%, but they refer to 00 as 00 because they say that it's the finest grind of any flour, which it's traditionally used for pizza crust. I know that's one of the biggest purposes. I've made pastas with it and other things as well, but it does have enough gluten or protein content in there to develop sufficient gluten. So,
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Travis, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just asking, is it okay to use cake flour for pancakes? I've never used it before.
I would not suggest it. Yeah, because the protein content is a little bit lower. You don't want crumbly, flaky pancakes. And we're about to jump into this subject right now, and so this is a great segue. So thank you, Travis, very, very much. Life in the bake shop. And I know Chef Carla and I have experienced a couple of students that get a little nervous when it comes into baking and pastry because a lot of us are from the savory side of the kitchen. However, we have a couple of suggestions for you that are going to help you out as we enter into this new world. Baking is simple, right? It's not the most complex thing in the world. What makes it complex is you, because as human beings, we love to change things and alter things. Our recommendation to you is be exact. Do not estimate. Baking is a science, and there is a specific reason we have specific ingredients for specific purposes. However, often as a young chef, I always thought that my substitutions would enhance the quality of the product and I could reinvent the muffin. Well, guess what? I was not right. And Chef Carla's smiling because she might have fallen that same path. But so rule number one, follow the instructions to the T. Do not deviate. And then suggestion number two, which is very, very important, when measuring, right? If you are working with a volume measurement, it is critical that you shake your container, right, to remove any possible air gaps in there. And then you also must level your container because of the fact 1 cup is 1 cup. It is not a rounded cup. It's not a cup with a divot in it. It's not a cup with an air gap. It is 1 cup. And so when we say you need to be exact, follow the recipe to the T. Next one, baking is a science. And we run into this every now and then in this class. Now that we're getting into the world of baking, we have a lot of creative students, which I love. I think that's pretty cool. But they like to add additional things to the recipes to, enhance them a little bit. Pancakes, for example, adding blueberries or strawberries or bananas. But what that does is that scientifically alters the amount of moisture in that recipe, which then affects the amount of leavening agent that you need, which then it doesn't rise or it doesn't turn out right. So we would ask that this week, especially, please follow the recipe. If you would like to make different pancakes or pancakes with additional flavors, we certainly urge that. Take a portion of the pancake batter, prepare it for the assignment, submit it to Chef Rich, and the remainder of the stuff, if you'd like to add berries or whatever to it, certainly feel free. Chef Carla, Chef Rich, and I would love to see those pictures. I think it would be kind of cool. So definitely keep that in the back of your mind. Recipes in general, especially in the commercial environment, are traditionally written in weight, right? Because weight provides an exact measurement. For example, Chef Carla is out in California where they have more humidity, especially during the summertime. So the flour will absorb more moisture while sitting on the shelf. However, I'm here in Arizona where it's so dry that the concrete cracks, right? So my flour has a very low moisture level. So 1 cup of my flour will not be equal to 1 cup of Chef Carla's flour because of the different absorption levels. So you need to make sure, or a lot of recipes are written based on weight. So remember that. A general rule of thumb when it comes to liquids, a pint is equal to a pound the world around. And that's just an old saying that we have. So a pint of milk is equal to a pint, or a pound of milk is equal to a pint of milk the world around. And then other baking recipes, you will see are written purely in percentages, okay? And the reason they do that, it provides even a further measure of accuracy when it comes to scaling out ingredients, okay? So don't be afraid if you see a recipe written in percentages, okay? If you read this week's research materials, it has in-depth information on how to calculate and extend all of that out. Chef Carla, do you have any words of wisdom as we enter into the world of baking?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. When it comes to baking, I think, especially if you have not that much experience, you guys, we want you guys to just learn the foundation, learn the basic way of doing that technique. And once you guys do that technique and you feel confident about, that you've done it well, then you guys can branch off and start playing around with flavor, changing the formula. We call usually baking ingredient recipes. We call that formula. So, but for now, let's stay with the basic foundation of learning the technique. I always tell my students, you can go as far as just making a change, as far as just cutting it by half. If the recipe looks too large for you, you can definitely just cut it by half, divide everything by 2. But that's as far as we're going to go with the changes. It's going to be a little different from, going back to the first few weeks of this class where we allow little things here and there. You can change this into, like the mushrooms to maybe zucchini. But baking is a science. So we definitely don't want you guys to be getting a little too creative at the beginning. Learn the foundation first.
Right. Everyone needs to remember one simple theory. A technique creates a recipe. A recipe does not create a technique. So the most important thing that you can learn, especially during your tenure here at Escoffier, is the technique. That is where the gold is. So stay focused on the technique, follow the recipes, measure exactly. Remember, you are working with science here. So make sure that you follow the instructions as written and everything will turn out perfectly fine. Don't just scoop your measuring cup in there and say, okay, this is a cup of flour, because guess what? It's not. Once you tap it, once you level it, then you have a cup of flour. So just remember, get yourself in that mentality as you do it. Any questions about entering into the world of baking? Anyone? All right, ladies and gents, let's take a look at pancakes. I know on my class page there's an article about pancakes that has a lot of different varieties, but for this week we're sticking with one particular variety. And a pancake is a flat, often thin, round, prepared from a flour-based batter with milk and butter and cooked on a hot surface such as a griddle or a frying pan with oil and butter. And that is the definition of a pancake, the short and the long of it. The biggest thing that you can pick up from this page right here is the appearance of the pancakes, right? If you take a look at this pancake here, it's GBD, as Chef Caesar likes to call it. It's golden, brown, and delicious. And the way that it's created, what we do in industry on our flat tops, which we'll take a look at here a little bit later, is we will add whole butter. And once that whole butter melts, then we will wipe it up, right? This pancake here was cooked in an excessive amount of fat. That fat creates bubbling, right? which creates all these little pock marks on top of your pancake. You don't want that. That's not a good appearance. So we add whole butter or drawn butter if you like to as well. And then once that butter is down and melted, then we're gonna wipe it up with a paper towel, and so we have a nice sheen on the surface. And then you apply your pancake batter. And once it begins to bubble on the opposite side, then you can flip your pancake. But we'll get to that here in just a moment. Benjamin, what's up?
I have a question. Can we when we make our pancakes, can we do like chocolate chips and stuff like that in it, or no?
I think you missed the last few minutes, Benjamin. Check this out. We urge you to get creative. We'd like to see that as well. But for this week's assignment, after you make your pancake batter, please separate a portion of it, prepare it for the assignment, and then with the remainder of your assignment, please add whatever you'd like to it, and then cook those off. Send us a picture, because Chef Carla, Chef Rich, and I would love to see that. And then and we're really focused this week on ensuring that everybody understands the technique. So that's where we're going with this. Does that answer your question, Benjamin?
Yeah.
All right, thanks. LaShonda, what's up?
Hi, Chef Warren. Quick question. Can we use clarified butter, or should we just use, if we do decide to use butter, should it just be in regular form?
In reference to putting it down into your pan?
Yes.
Okay, you can either use whole butter or clarified butter. Traditionally, in industry, we keep a lot of clarified butter on our stations. Butter is 80% fat, 20% moisture, milk solids, and whey protein. And what happens to that 20%, it has a very low smoke point. So a lot of places don't like to use the whole butter because you get that brown kind of bitter flavor into your pancakes.
Okay.
So clarified butter is actually the preferred method. So you'll add that clarified butter to your cooking surface, allow it to spread out evenly, and then take a paper towel and leave a sheen behind.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions about that, ladies and gents? All right, rock and roll. On to leavening agents. Leavening agents are a big deal in the world of culinary arts. Leavening agents are basically what causes things to rise, right? So generally it's either a fungus, a chemical, or some type of dairy product that will give off a gas or a level of moisture during the cooking process, which then rises, which the gluten then captures and holds everything in place. So some of the more common leavening agents that we work with are yeast, which is an active dry yeast. We'll get into the different types of yeast. Chef Carla, is that next week? We talk about yeast and all that kind of good stuff?
Week 9 and 10, we're going to cover.
9 and 10. Okay. And then we have baking soda, baking powder, butter, because when it gets hot, it gives off steam, which forces your product to rise. Eggs naturally souffle or increase in volume as they're cooking. Baking soda and baking powder, ladies and gents, oftentimes we get those two confused, right? Baking soda is sodium bicarbonate and needs an acid and moisture and warmth in order to give off carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide, when it gives off, forces the product to rise, and once again, the gluten holds it in place. Baking powder, however, is sodium bicarbonate with the addition of tartaric acid. Right? Tartaric acid was discovered at the bottom of wine barrels many, many years ago. But what they do is they take that acid and they mix it with the sodium bicarbonate, which then becomes baking powder. Okay, so that's the difference. So traditionally speaking, when you are working with a recipe that does not have an acid, such as lactic acid or acid from a berries or citrus, the recipe will call for baking powder. Baking soda, however, will be in a recipe that does have an acid in it. Does that make sense to everybody? Ladies and gents, let's move on to our next subject here. We're going to take a look at the pancake recipe for this week. This recipe makes 30 portions. Not sure your family size, not sure how many people you're planning on feeding. However, if you'd like to scale it back a bit, that's perfectly fine. We would like to see you prepare the recipe as written, though, if at all possible. This pancake batter will last for a day or so. What happens when you're working with baking powder and baking soda in conjunction, once they are mixed with that liquid, they will continue to give off gas. So the second day or later, a couple hours later, that pancake batter will not leaven as much and you will not get the same rise out of it. So that's the big concern there. So the basic mentality behind making pancakes is you're going to sift your dry ingredients. Sifting is a very important technique. You don't have to go out and buy a sifter. If you have a pasta basket or a strainer, something like that, sifting, number one, ensures that your ingredients get blended well together, but it also aerates as well, and it begins that nice light pancake batter that we're looking for. So make sure that you do that. It also removes all of the lumps, should you have any lumps in any of your ingredients. You're going to mix your buttermilk and your melted butter. Make sure that when you melt the butter, do not add steaming, boiling butter to it, okay? Because what that's going to do is that's going to force the baking powder and the baking soda to give off an excessive amount of gas, and your pancakes will not leaven. So when it says melted butter, it's melted butter. And then once you have your liquids mixed together, you're going to add your wet ingredients into the dry ingredients. Follow the recipe. It's that simple. And then you need to be careful that you do not overmix. We just talked about glutens a few moments ago. With all-purpose flour coming in at 10% protein, if you sit there and you put it into your KitchenAid mixer or your handheld mixer at home, you're probably going to overdevelop the glutens, and Chef Rich will be able to identify that when he takes a look at your pancakes here, hopefully later this week, not next week. So you want to make sure that you bring that pancake batter together just to the point that it is blended. There can be some lumps in there. If there's a couple of lumps, it's all good. Don't worry about it. It'll work out during the cooking process. So minimal mixing is required. Yes.
Yes, Chef. I was going to tell you, I have a picture that I can share that it shows exactly what you're saying. Let me show you that. I'm sorry.
Bring it up. Perfect.
Yeah, so here's the photograph that what Chef is talking about, you know, because we're dealing with glutens, right? It's going to, I think you're going to have the urge of wanting to like mix this really, really well. But when you're mixing it really well, what's happening is that you're deflating all those, the gases that are being released from the chemical leavener. And so, you know, you're going to get something that looks a little bit too flat like this. Mm-hmm. This is something that we're looking for, something that looks a little bit lumpy, a little chunky, you know. Make sure that everything is moistened, of course, but then you stop mixing it, because this is what the results that we're looking for. Look how thick that is, right? And look at those big air pockets that you see in between. That's the carbon dioxide that was released from the baking powder, baking soda. So that's pretty much what we're looking for. So please hold your horses, right? Yeah. Try not to mix too much so you can get beautiful results.
It is hard because as humans, we want it to be perfectly smooth and silky and sultry and all that, and we can't do that. So we have to use a little bit of self-discipline and restraint when it comes to making these. Those pancakes that Chef Carla just showed, by the way, had an excellent surface, an excellent appearance to them. That's because they used a minimal amount of oil on the cooking surface. If you have excessive amounts of oil, once again, you're going to have those pock marks, and we don't like those. So here's some additional pictures here of some nice looking pancakes. So you're gonna have about a 2-ounce portion. If you only have oil, you can use oil. It will work. Just make sure that you remove excess oil. It's very, very important. Your pan should be preheated. It's nice to use a non-stick surface for this, but if you don't have that, our general rule of thumb in the kitchen is hot pan, cold oil equals no stick, okay? It's a very simplistic formula. And when I say cold oil, it could be room temperature oil. That's perfectly fine. So make sure you do preheat your surface. You don't want a smoking hot pan for pancakes. It's not necessary. Right around, I guess, at home, I think on an electric range, it'd be like a medium-low setting, which is perfectly fine. However, sometimes it takes a pancake or two to adjust the heat to the right surface. Pancakes are like anything else. If you put a lot of pancakes into that pan is going to get cool, and then that batter is going to spread out. So you want to make sure that you don't overcrowd your pan. Once your pancake batter is down onto the grill, then you're going to watch for those bubbles coming up, right? Once it begins to gently bubble on the exposed surface, then you will stick your spatula underneath and flip. Do not stick your spatula in flat, right? Because what you're going to do is you're going to scoot the pancake across your pan. You always, when we work with spatulas, we go in at an angle, a gentle angle, which will allow the pancake to go up, and then you flip. But if you go straight in, it's a good possibility you're either going to tear your pancake or it's not going to, it's going to scoot across the pan. Make sure you serve those when they're warm, and make sure you make your family members happy by sharing it. So it's a good suggestion. Any questions about pancakes, ladies and gents? Nope. Omelets.
Oh, I saw a question, Chef, from Johnny.
Johnny, what's up?
When we talk about applying the butter to put and wiping it off, are we doing that between every batch?
You're gonna have to get the feel for it. Depending on the surface that you're using. Traditionally, I'll do it like the first 2 or 3 batches or 2 or 3 pancakes that I put down, and then I have a feel for the surface that I'm working on. And then you'll understand whether, hey, it's sticking just a little bit. Maybe I need to hit it with a little bit of clarified butter, whole butter, or oil.
Okay, sounds good.
Sound good, Johnny? Okay.
And Chef, one more thing. I can share really quickly, but the recipe just calls for 4 eggs, right? 4 eggs. So what does that mean, you guys? 4 eggs. What size eggs are we gonna get? Do you guys remember what we mentioned last week?
Large.
Yes, very good. Large eggs. So double check, the carton, the size of the eggs that you guys buy. It's gotta be large. And if you have something that is larger, of course, it's going to give you extra moisture, which is going to make your pancakes kind of sag a little bit and stretch a little bit too much because you're adding extra moisture if you're going with a larger egg. So large egg is what we're looking for. Good.
Absolutely. Great point. That's very, very important. And that kind of circles back to the point of doing exactly what the instructions say, especially when it comes to baking in general. It'll make your life a lot easier. So it'll really work out. Ladies and gents, we're moving into the world of omelets. And omelets is a very vital part of breakfast cookery. They come in different shapes, sizes, and forms with different fillings. And they can be a lot of fun to work with because you can get quite creative with them. An omelet traditionally is an egg dish made with beaten eggs. I've worked in a lot of places over the years, and some places like to add cream, butter, or whatever to that egg mix. I do not like to do that. I just like to serve fresh eggs, especially when it comes to omelets. Do not pre-season your egg batter, because the sodium begins to break down the egg whites and they perform completely differently. So if you crack eggs in advance, do not season them while in the bowl. Do not season the egg or season the eggs when they get into the pan. You will notice a difference in the behavior of the product. There's a couple of pictures up here on the screen of some different types of omelets. This fold of omelet right here, this is referred to as a French fold. It is a tri-fold omelet, and I'm a firm believer in every place I've ever worked at, that's the way we serve omelets, right? So it's basically you fold one side in, and then you fold the other side over the top and slide it out of the pan. So if you have a round circular pan, which we all do, right, you're going to fold 1/3 in and then fold the other third over the top and then flip it out onto the plate, and it looks very similar to a burrito. So omelets are very temperature sensitive. Chef Carla mentioned at the beginning of the class, we like to go low and slow when we cook eggs, which is extremely important. We do not want to see brown. We don't want to see that crispy edge. We don't want to see a dry product either. An omelet should still have a sense of moisture when it gets to the table. You must remember that eggs are extremely susceptible to carryover heat, meaning that once you get that egg up to cooking temperature, that it's going to continue to cook after you take it off the plate. So eggs will oftentimes pull a little bit prematurely from the pan because we know they're going to continue to cook. So keep that in the back of your mind. We want to see your omelets with some nice moisture on them this week. Let's take a look at our omelet recipe. We're working with what's called a Western omelet this week. And this is an ideal example. I think Chef Rich was talking about this last week with the importance of having your mise en place organized, right? When we say we want to see mise en place, it has to be ready for execution of the dish, right? Grab and go, grab and go. Because if we have to be walking around looking for things, or I didn't chop that bell pepper all the way, then you're going to slow yourself down and your dish doesn't come out as intended. So the recipe, ladies and gents, you have 2 fresh eggs, right? Green bell pepper, small dice. We all remember a small dice comes at a 1/4 inch by a 1/4 inch by a 1/4 inch. Red bell pepper, small dice. Onion, small dice. Ham, small dice. Clarified butter or oil. And salt and pepper. You're going to begin by whisking those eggs together quite well. And then with omelets or any other egg preparation, you're always going to start with a warm pan. Not a hot pan, but a warm pan. So hot pan plus cold oil equals no stick. So put your pan over medium heat, depending on how strong your heat source is. And then you will add your oil. Once you have your eggs thoroughly scrambled, you can add them in, or you can add your peppers and onions to the saute pan, okay? For this recipe, they want you to saute the peppers and onions first, and then you're going to add your ham. You don't want to saute your ham with the peppers and onions because it'll dry the product out. It's very, very important. Once your onions are translucent, not caramelized, right? Translucent means that you can see through them, but there's no color on them, right? Very, very important. Then you're going to pour in your egg mixture. And what you're going to notice around the very edge of the pan, you'll notice that the texture and the color of the eggs is going to begin to change. You will take your spatula, preferably a plastic spatula, and scoot it in and allow the raw egg to the bottom of the pan, okay? And that should cook the majority of it, allowing the raw egg on the top to flow to the bottom of the pan. That will help. You're going to slip a spatula underneath it, and then you're going to fold it in half, and then it goes onto the pan. And it should not be dry or overcooked at that point. Any questions about the omelets, ladies and gents? No? Sound good? Once again, just follow the instructions.
Chef.
Good shape. Yeah.
Chef, can I use cheese instead of ham?
We would prefer for this week's assignments that we stick as close as possible to the actual assignment. I'm fine if you need to use cheese instead of the ham, but we'd rather limit the substitutions at that.
Okay.
Sound
Or
good?
Can we use another meat other than ham?
If need be, if you're unable to eat ham for one reason or the other, you could certainly add a different product. I don't want to say bacon because it's from the same family or the same animal source. But you could consider doing that. Some people like to add turkey. Some people will add chicken breast, or some people will go straight vegetarian.
Okay, thank you.
Sound good, Terry?
Thank you,
You're welcome. All right, ladies and gents, let's take a look at some of the stuff that you're going to be using once you're in industry, so you can take this project home. We talked about a flat top earlier today in class. It's one of the first things you turn on in the morning and one of the last things you turn off at night. That flat top will be set to a very specific temperature and will remain that way for the majority of the day, but that's where you'll end up cooking a lot of these items that we're talking about, such as the pancakes. We'll even do omelets on flat tops as well. And so that's a picture of a flat top. This is another flat top. They come in various sizes, 30 inch, 36 inch, 48 inch, and 60 inch. So you can get some very large flat tops out in industry. This is what we refer to as a pancake gun. In industry, I'm sure most of you have been to restaurants before where every single pancake is exactly the same size. Well, we use what's called a pancake gun, which disperses a predetermined amount of batter so each one of your pancakes comes out the same size. Teflon pan, kind of discourage against Teflon pans because I think they get misused. Teflon pans were invented by the same guy that invented Kevlar back in the 1930s. At about 350 degrees, they begin to give off toxic fumes. Those toxic fumes have been shown to cause health concerns in some people and laboratory animals. So prefer to use the non-stick. There's a lot of other non-stick surfaces out there, such as ceramic, but a Teflon pan would work for this assignment. Spatulas, ladies and gents, come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. Make sure that if you are using a plastic spatula for this week's assignment for your omelet, if you are using a Teflon pan, you don't want any metal near that because it does scratch it up. So you're going to want to use a plastic spatula. In the world of culinary arts, spatulas are sold with different color handles, and those different color handles determine the level of heat that that spatula can take. For example, spatulas in your kitchen that have maroon handles are designed for high heat cooking, such as omelets. Spatulas with white handles or beige handles, as they become after a couple of weeks of use, are designed for pastry areas, scraping bowls, and that type of thing. So once you get into industry, make sure you pay attention to that. And if you don't have high heat spatulas, make sure you ask your chef to get you one. Stainless steel bowls, we don't use glass. No glass in industry. It breaks, it shatters, it makes a mess. Whisk are big business for us. We don't just go out and buy whisk. There are horsehair whips, which are designed for stirring things that are very thick, like stews and cream soups. They're very thick. They're not very flexible. Then we have French whisk that have a very narrow head. They're also called piano wire. They're very, very flexible. For this, you're going to want to use more of a horsehair whip because it's a lot more sturdy and not nearly as flexible. We also mentioned, ladies and gents, scales, because we like to weigh out most of our ingredients when we bake. So down here is a picture of a baker's scale, which you will see once you're in industry. Weights on one side. You'll notice a small plastic container here on this side, which balances out the weight of the bin right here. And we're also using a lot of digital scales as well in the kitchen. Any questions about kitchen equipment? Ladies and gents, moving on to this week's assignment. Chef Carla, we're cranking. I love this. We're on a roll. All right, ladies and gents.
I won't be able to. I don't need to like rush out of here today.
I know. You might have time for a cup of coffee when Chef Rich down there smiling. He's like, yeah. Going. All right, ladies and gents, your assignment this week. You are going to make the pancakes and the omelet as we discussed, right? It is a Western omelet with peppers, onions, and ham. Be very conscientious about your substitutions. We want to make sure that you understand the technique as we have discussed, especially with the pancakes, right? Make your pancake batter, take a portion of it, use it for your assignment, and take the other portion and use it for whatever you'd like. So be very cautious in that area. We need to see some good self-identification photos. It is a representation of your professionalism once you are in industry. It is very, very important. When you're in industry, if you show up wearing a wrinkled chef coat with dirty fingernails and dirty shoes, you might get sent back home. So we need to start getting ourselves in the habit of doing that now. And then sanitation, critical. Nail it, everybody. You can do it. And then mise en place. We've talked about this multiple times. We want to see that mise en place looking strong. It's extremely critical. It's not something we're not just interested in seeing that you have the ingredients to make the product, but we're also interested in seeing you develop your sense of organization in order to execute in a timely fashion. That's the mentality behind that. And then the required photos are all listed: pancakes, wet ingredients, batter with all ingredients, finished product. And then when cool, break pancake in half, take picture of internal structure. We want to make sure that you've developed the appropriate amount of glutens and that your leavening agent gave off the appropriate amount of carbon dioxide so we can see that everything worked. With the omelet, Make sure that we see properly cooked omelet, no filling. Or hang on, we're going to have to revise this, Chef Carla. Yeah, so you're going to have to follow the rubric that's on the class page currently. So we need to see the omelet cut to ensure that it is cooked properly. And then we also need to see the omelet plated as well. So very, very important. Ladies and gents, a couple of parting words before we wrap up the live session this week. Rewatch this live session before you actually do your pancake assignment and get yourself into the world of baking. It's only going to make your life easier and you'll be that much more efficient. Watch demos on the class page. There are demo videos for both pancakes and omelets. So make sure you take full advantage of those. And then after that, check out this presentation one more time, right? Review the assignment page so you don't miss any picks this week. We want to make sure that everybody gets 100. Chef Carla, Chef Rich, and I, that is our ultimate goal, to see everybody walk out of here with 100. And then make sure your narrative is complete with observations and thoughts. My other class is 187, and guess what? We're utilizing all the skills that you developed writing these narratives in that class. So the more you work on them, the better you're going to be in industry. Writing menus and describing your product to your staff and your guest is a talent, and it is a sales tool that is big. And then don't use a big pan for your omelet, ladies and gents. No 10-inch, no 12-inch pans. The ideal size is right around 6 inches. So make sure that you do your best. Maybe you could borrow one from a friend. I know Walmart has some that are very inexpensive. $5, $6, that you can get yourself a nice omelet pan. Make sure you don't overcook your omelets or your pancakes this week. Make sure they still have some life when they come off the grill. Very, very important. GBD, very, very important. Johnny, what's up?
What would you say the optimal temperature would be for the egg and the pancake, or both?
Okay, if you're going to take a temperature, egg whites and egg yolks cook at 2 different temperatures. Egg yolks start to cook at 140 degrees. Egg whites cook at 180 degrees. We always like to see our dairy products taken up to a minimum of 145 degrees. So your omelet, you're going to probably want around right around 175. You have to remember, eggs are very susceptible to carryover heat. So when you pull it out of your pan, if you pull it out at 190 degrees, woo, by the time it gets to your customer, it's going to be like jerky. It's going to be tough. I don't know if anybody's ever cut into an omelet before and it has kind of a surface on it. We don't want that. We want our fork just to fall right through it. So pull it off, 160, 170 degrees, you should be fine.
Okay, you said the omelets should be done low and slow.
Low and slow, that is correct.
And using a griddle for the pancakes, that temperature should be around what?
The ideal temperature is going to be right around 325 to be cooking on the flat top for pancakes. You're going to have to give or take. And we can't tell you the exact temperature because they all vary according to heat source. What you're looking for, you'll know you have the right temperature if you develop the bubbles on one side and you look underneath and you have that beautiful golden brown appearance on the other side. At that point, you'll know that you've gotten the perfect temperature. However, if it's burnt on the bottom and there's no bubbles on the top, it's too hot. If the bubbles are no longer coming out, they've come and gone, and it's still not golden brown on the underside, it's too cool. So you're going to have to adjust appropriately.
All right, thanks, Chef.
You're welcome.
All right, Chef, I gotta go. So.
All right, ladies and gents, we're wrapping up. Thank you, Chef Carla. Thank you, everybody, for a great live session. I appreciate all the questions and all the other information. If anybody has any questions, make sure you reach out. You let Chef Carla, Chef Rich, or myself know. We're here for your success. Don't forget to get your assignments in early this week. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.